In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
It is 100% real. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Curious Dimension podcast. I am your host, Matt Barone. I want to thank everybody that's been following on the Facebook page, Instagram account, YouTube channel. If you get a second, please hit that like button, that subscribe button, and leave a comment. It really helps out the channel and to make those platforms grow. My guest today is Steve Bassett. Stephen is a political activist, disclosure advocate, and the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996 to end the government-imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of disclosure, the formal confirmation by heads of state of an ET presence engaging the human race. He's given over 1,200 radio and television interviews. Stephen is the co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance based in LA, for which I am now a founding member and happy to be so. Please welcome Steve Bassett. All right, we are rocking and rolling, Steve. How are you this morning?
Pretty good. March 1st, 2024.
Wow.
Could be an interesting month.
It's definitely been a wild ride. Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, Steve, I think I first saw you on CNN years ago. Is that right? Were you on there back like in the mid 2000s? Did I see you?
Yeah. Early 2000s. I fell off their Rolodex around 2017, 18, 17, actually. I left the country for about 9 months. It's going to be a very interesting year, very interesting month, perhaps even.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I think I first saw you on CNN years ago, and just a little backstory. I've said this on the show before, but I kind of found this topic back in 2005, 2006, right after YouTube had launched, and probably like most people my age, I'm 45 now, and in my mid 20s, this wasn't even a blip on my radar. No clue that there was anything going on, just living my life, happy-go-lucky. And then when YouTube came out, it was inundated with interviews and videos and footage. And, obviously I knew it wasn't all real. I knew there was plenty of fake stuff out there, but I knew something was going on. And it took my world from this to this. And then all of a sudden I felt I have to understand what this is, what's going on here. And you were one of the names that was in the mix there of people giving information out. And one of the things I found from an interview with you early on, you were predicting some things that have come to fruition, especially about the removing of stigma. That was something you were preaching back in the early 2000s. And you're like, this is something real that needs to be done. And it kind of seems like that's happening. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Taking way too long.
Yeah.
way too. Yeah, we're in the 77th year of a policy of the United States government to using propaganda, disinformation, misinformation, some coercion, sometimes even a little nastier than coercion, to try to convince the American people that they can't believe their lying eyes. And while the United States is not exactly not a authoritarian state, it's certainly not a dictatorship. Authoritarian countries, they thrive on making, if not convincing, the citizens of the nation to not believe their lying eyes. And in service to the autocrat party, whatever. We're not there. We do it. Perhaps a little less violence and maybe serving a purpose, a better purpose in the mind of some. But what we have been embargoing is literally the fundamental reality of the universe. It is almost the most profound truth that any human being will ever learn in their life, that we're not the only civilization in this galaxy, that there's life all over the galaxy and all over the universe. And they are visiting us and engaging us. Government has embargoed that for 77 years. It will answer. I say this, our government and its allies, virtually the entire, quote, free world, as well as the unfree world. I think the motivations were different between the United States and communist China, communist Soviet Union, and some other smaller, lesser important countries that also were led by sociopaths. But overall, the effect was the same. The world's people, which when Roswell took place was 2 billion, and then doubled 4 billion, is now at 8 billion. The world people have been told for 77 years, this is nothing important. This is not real. Don't pay attention. 77 years. And it is historically going to be viewed poorly. The justification for it in the early days, understandable. That justification eroded. 1991, it should have been gone, and they kept it. It is the greatest lie of all time. That's where we are 77 years since the Roswell event, without getting into all
too much
those
detail.
flying ETs that came down thousands of years ago because they needed to be worshipped like a god. Who doesn't want that? Imagine that carnival cruise. We're going to take you to this fine country where you and everybody else on the ship will be worshipped as gods by the locals. But the last 77 years is what matters. And that is going to end, mercifully, finally, very soon. We're right at the cusp. The world is going to know there are non-human extraterrestrials from multiple planets, almost certainly, engaging us with advanced technology. And then we're going to decide what.
And that cusp is what I kind of want to talk about. It's something you've done very eloquently that I still need to be educated on is I know about the 2017 New York Times article, which I think you might agree that was a huge part that maybe the tide started turning at that point. And then, here we are today with the Schumer amendment. And there's some things that have happened in between there that I'm still a little bit fuzzy on. I'm talking about the years of like 2020, 2021, and 2022. And I know you have some good knowledge about that. I'm wondering, can you take me on a little journey from the past, from like 2017 when that article hits to where we are now and maybe where this is going to go? And what do you say?
All right, keeping in mind that the history of the truth embargo, which I tried twice to make a documentary, just the pandemic really ruined whatever opportunity there was for that, will be written up in thousands of books. We only know a fraction of it. So much of it occurred behind classification and security statuses, public eye, not only in this country, but in countries around the world, which hopefully not too much of it was put in the shredder or the burn basket, burn barrel, and we'll be able to eventually see the docs, see the records, see the accounts, and not have to rely on death confession. But this is history. It doesn't get bigger than this. All right. The Civil War was a big deal. A lot of people were involved. I think something like 40,000 books have been written about the Civil War, and we know it in great detail, even without having cameras and stuff. This is way bigger than the Civil War, and I hope the history. We connect the dots that we have, knowing that we're going to get some things wrong, but we have to connect those dots so that the people have some idea of what's happening as they decide whether they're going to enter the effort to end this lie, end this embargo. So you just can't say there's an embargo, can't really say more, but we need to end it, join up. No, you have to try to explain it as best you can. And that's my job. I'm not an academic, not an intellectual. I'm an activist, pretty much standard, though the issue is quite unusual. And my job is to try to communicate this to just regular people in a way that's understandable, in a way that is not too dramatic, and above all, injected with humor. That's my contribution. I can talk about the truth embargo and the government's policies and the ETs and everything else, and I can also get people to laugh at the same time. What can I say? Had a stand up in me from age 17, didn't realize it, didn't capitalize it. Otherwise, I'd probably be living in a Malibu house with an ocean view right now. Okay, now, here is the short version. The truth embargo has reigned supreme 77 years. Its first real serious confrontation with reality was in the early 1990s, after the Cold War I ended, and there was huge optimism that there might be some dramatic shift in geopolitics that could open the doors to starting to fix the world's problems instead of finding more ways to make it worse. There was a bit of an opening after the Cuban Missile Crisis in late 1962, early 63, because visionary President John Kennedy, understanding full well how close we came to nuclear war, and almost certainly knowing there was an ET presence, one way or the other, he might not have been taken to see any tech or bodies or get briefing by the CIA, who hated him, but simply because he was the president, and people like to tell presidents important things on the downside because, well, you do. It's an opportunity, Mr. President. All I can say is, I don't know what you know about this issue, that the ET issue is real, Roswell is real, just letting you know, and the president might decide what to do about it, and in every case, they, with the exception of two, they've done nothing. There was a window there, and there is evidence that Kennedy was trying to possibly open that window. He had made some communications with Khrushchev along the lines of joint space ventures and what have you, and possibly even addressing the UFO issue together. And of course, they shot him in the head. So that was a pretty significant opportunity. Then 90, 91, 92, 93 was another opportunity. There was an effort to get the files, get information from the Department of Defense. It was the wrong administration. It was still too soon. And basically, the Department of Defense told the president, hell, and his wife, and his staff, and everybody else, right? Because like Kennedy, the military complex hated.
This was Clinton?
Clinton, yeah, the Clinton administration.
Clinton,
They hated
yep.
the president. So that opportunity was wasted, and so we move forward. Finally, something happens that sets us into what we'll call the end game of this fascinating chess game. Government with us all this time. It's 7 years on now. It could have been less. It could have been 4 years easily. Could have been 3 years easily. But it's 7, reflecting
Because of
the
COVID?
historical developments. Yes?
Because of COVID? Did COVID set it back?
Well, everything. Right? Pick something. Right? COVID, Ukraine war, and so forth. And also the decline of the United States political system. I mean, the real decline of it. Not just we're having a bad time, but literally it's going into the crap. All of this did not help move things along when this birthing process, which has been going on all these years, I guess you could say we've been trying to give birth to disclosure since 1947. Well, the water broke in 2017. We've been continuing to try to give birth with a dermal for another 7 years. Now, what happened was simply this. So many people in the United States government know there's an extraterrestrial presence. Trust me. It's a vast number, going all the way back to 47. And with very few exceptions, based on national security, status and clearance and so forth, and keeping their jobs, they have not challenged that policy of embargo. Neither have any of the colleges and universities in the entire country, all 5,000. By and large, the media has been complicit and gone along with it to a degree. They have covered the phenomena extensively with tens and tens of thousands of articles, which were legitimate. And in that sense, they did their job, but they never challenged the U.S. government on this issue. They didn't investigate. They didn't try to find secret, insiders. They didn't go through the trash cans at the Pentagon looking for evidence. No, it was like, we'll cover what's going on, but we're not going to poke the bear on this. So they went along. By 2007, actually in the area around 2013 to 17, so many people inside the government who knew the ET president was real, knew the phenomena was real, knew it was lying, that they were increasingly inclined to see this policy end. But how many we don't know. It's a substantial number, And in a period between late 2014, 2016, right in there, a number of them came together in whatever way and made the decision that they would take.
Mm.
They couldn't do it as employees, but they couldn't do it while they're under salary. But after leaving government, they may have the odd contract, but after leaving government, they would go public, connected to an effort to bring the truth to the American people.
Mm-hmm.
Long story there, which hopefully we'll learn more about. But the upshot is that they came forward in a group, part of an organization called the To the Stars Academy of Art and Science. It was announced on October 11th with a YouTube, a Facebook video where the various people were introduced, and that was spread quite widely. Also, they put up a website. And I saw that website, and I instantly knew what was. Unfortunately, I was out of the country, and wasn't able to get back to the country. And so history was breaking back in the U.S., and I was very comfortable and very happy in London, and had to watch it from afar while my colleagues, God bless them, were in front and engaging the issue. And I was essentially off the field in the bathroom, taking a shower, right? And so what happened? They came forward, 10 individuals with their resumes, part of an organization designed to investigate the issue, educate the public. It was a public benefit entity, public benefit corporation. And they announced it on October, and the bios of the people made it quite clear what was going on. That was it. It was the beginning of this whole thing, beginning of the end, right there.
And what year is that again?
This was October 11th of 2017. That is the historical moment that will go down in history, is when, for the first time, a coordinated effort by former members of the military intelligence complex, virtually across the board, every aspect was represented in there to some degree or another, came forward with a mission to essentially bring the truth to the American people, which ultimately meaning end the truth embargo. Plenty of people had come forward with books and research and everything else. I got about 500 behind me. There's been thousands and thousands of them. Plenty of well-known people stated in front of a camera there's an extraterrestrial presence. That's not it. That's not enough. They were going to pursue getting that truth to the American people, which means that they were going to pursue ending the truth embargo. And the way the truth embargo must end and will end is with formal confirmation of this truth by the heads of state of governments. And that is called disclosure with a capital D, concept I came up with in early aughts. Not disclosure with the small d, been around a long time. That's cool. And is always going on and will continue. I'm talking capital D. Disclosure day, confirmation day, disclosure with a capital D. The day the first head of state confirms it. Until we get that, we're going to continue to go round and round and round in circles with minimal, what I call minimal progress into the post-disclosure era and a new paradigm. So that's when it begins. And I'm sitting in London wondering, okay, that's great. What are you going to do? Just coming forward and say, here we are. Enough.
Yeah, now what?
And what they did was completely convincing intentions were. That was that members of this 10, we'll call them the Magnificent 10, delivered important information to some journalists, Leslie Kane, Ralph Dahl, who then took it to New York, which vetted it, and then published it. It was an historic story. It will go down in history. It was printed in 2 editions of the Times on print. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's newspapers that have print on them, and people used to get them.
Yes.
And that was fine, but they also put it up on the internet where the news really is obtained. And since some of the evidence included video clips, gun camera clips that had been legally taken from the Pentagon, provided to the New York Times, we were off to the races. Stories themselves were quite important. But the gun camera clips were profound. Why? Not because they showed extraterrestrial craft. We don't know what they showed. They showed was unidentified craft, which was important, but had been filmed by the gun cameras of U.S. intercept planes, I think F-17s. That was really important. And that they were actually released, which was profoundly important, because no gun camera clips of intercepts of UAPs had ever been released by any government ever. And there are thousands and thousands of them in the vaults of just about every government in the country that has an Air Force that goes up and actually intercepts planes that fly over, or objects that fly over their airspace without transponders or clearance. That's what they do. People think that that doesn't happen. Go rent yourself a Cessna 142 and head on up and start flying over another nation, right? Just fly,
see what happens,
and watch what happens. So that, of course, was the moment it really sensed it was going. That is the beginning of the end of the truth embargo. Now 7 years into that. And so, to also be very crisp, very short, the To the Stars of Academy of Arts and Science Press, attention, put out books, so forth, was doing its thing. But there were 3 people in that group that were particularly, actually there were 4 that were particularly ones that I noted the most. That was former DIA and military intel person Luis Elizondo, cooperative Christopher, very noted scientist Gary Nolan, and I think one of the directors of the Lockheed Skunk Works, both invested. These were the 4 that I noted the most, and I expected something. What happened is, as things went forward and the press continued to cover it, and they've been covering it relentlessly ever since, not surprisingly, 3 individuals left the To the Stars Academy to go on their own. Chief Justice kind of stepped into the background, there's hell, in order to pursue what was the actual fundamental agenda for this maneuver. They had to do it on their own. They could not be doing this work as a member of a public benefit corporation with this mission statement and all that stuff. It was a delivery. Maybe, I'm sure that the opposition to the truth embargo saw it as a Trojan horse. They brought the Trojan horse in, and then these 3 guys were inside, and they came out and started doing stuff.
Right.
And so what happens between that article, December 16, 2017, over the next 3 years, is that, 1, Elizondo became essentially the spokesperson, the one trying to communicate to the public. He's a down-to-earth guy, even though he's a brilliant and he's got multiple degrees, including in science and so forth. He was going to take on the social media, give the interviews, talk about it. They also did a show on History Channel. He is the one that's kind of the interface, which was a very tough gig for him because his background was working undercover in dangerous parts of the world, serving his country, right? And not being on social media. I'm pretty sure
that's a different animal.
Now he's in social media trying to be the front person for communication. And of course, what he learned very quickly is when you go on social media on an issue like this, you're going to get all kinds of attention and pushback and trolling and doxing and whatever else. And it was not an easy ride for him, but that was his job. Christopher Mellon pursued political engagement. And to some degree, though I think it came out a little later, I think Gary Nolan was pursuing the scientific engagement as you were kind of communicating that. So you got the 3 pillars here, right? Over the next 3 years, all of that was happening, but what Christopher Mellon was doing, by and large, was behind the scenes. His job, I think, was to get the Congress up to speed, educated to the degree possible. Not by sending them books, by bringing witnesses, bringing people who had strong information up to talk to members. So for 3 years, meetings, who knows how many were taking place, in which the appropriate members of Congress were getting a chance to meet witnesses firsthand, like Graber, like Graves, and others, I assure you, and personally talk to them.
With firsthand accounts, probably.
Doesn't matter. Firsthand, secondhand, important accounts. And these are private discussions. They weren't in skiffs, but immediately afterward, they weren't immediately walking out in the hall and telling some reporter what was going on. In other words, he was educating the United States Congress to the degree, to the highest degree possible, understanding there were plenty of members of Congress that knew there was an ET present. That didn't mean they were going to do anything. So some were getting information perhaps for the first time. Others were getting information that would help them do something. This went on for a couple of years, a lot. And hopefully Mr. Mellon will be able to go into greater detail someday and explain all the work that he did there, which I think qualifies him easily for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Same for Luis Elizondo. This goes on for 3 years. Why? Why do you brief members of Congress? Why do you bring this information to them? You do it because Congress is the legislative body, and in order to pass legislation or address an issue, they need to have a relatively clear understanding. In this case, that understanding had to be sub rosa, by and large. I mean, they can go watch documentaries on YouTube and Amazon like anybody else, or relatively privately. I mean, they can go buy books as long as they don't leave them lying around their office. They can self-educate themselves. And understand all that work had been stigmatized for decades by the government. And there was some fantastic work and research done, beautifully written books by pretty sharp people. And the government said all it was crap. And the people writing it were fools. And so tainted it. So he brought firsthand witnesses, military witnesses, to talk to them, which gave it substance. All right. So this goes on for 3 years. Then, of course, exactly what you expect happened. And this, of course, is 2020. And this is now we're approaching the end game. We're getting even further into the end game here. And Marco Rubio makes the first move by putting legislation in the COVID Relief Act, signed in December of 2020, a bill pertaining to 2021. A bit of language, nothing profound, but it broke a barrier by legally requesting that the government provide a classified report back by June 25th.
Can I stop you and ask you one question real quick?
Yeah.
How significant is it that someone like Marco Rubio did that? Like it could have been somebody else, but he's clearly somebody that has presidential aspirations, or at least did at one point. How significant is it for someone like him to do that?
It's not. Well, it's not. It was going to be the Senate Intel Committee. That's the committee was going to make them. It could have been another committee, but I'm pretty sure the Intel Committee was the right one. The Armed Services Committee is right there. One could make a case for it. But really, when you think about it, the nature of the issue, how it's been handled all these years, it was the Senate Intel Committee. And this has happened, and they were getting briefed. I think I heard a rumor that he briefed all 17 of them at one time at some point. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so the fact that it was Rubio is because he was the chairman of the Intel. And so he was the one that brought the initial legislation. He championed the initial legislation. So it's not, that's what you would expect. All right. Now, the fact that he had been a presidential candidate is non-trivial, and it speaks very powerfully to Marco Rubio, because this was a risky thing to do. It was the right thing to do. It was a risky thing to do. And one might have thought that he still had presidential aspiration, but he did it. And that history will be very kind to Senator Rubio for that reason. So that legislation is passed. A report does come back. But most importantly, the media now was really getting involved. And so between the signing of that legislation and the June 25 report, hundreds of articles were written. And of course, I'm tracking them all and actually archiving them on my website, where you can go see links to all of the ones that are of any relevance. I'm up to 15,000 articles now, and it's running around 1,900 articles a year. And that's triaged out of 4,000 articles, some of which are just not important or trivial, small publications, whatever. So the media coverage just accelerated, which of course was going to make the truth embargo ever more difficult. And so that was the first legislation in the history of the country on this issue. 2020 signed, and that was the 73rd year of we finally got the first legislation. Okay. Media coverage increases, lots happening, the internet's starting to go on fire, blah, blah, blah. It's all this and that. And then again, we get a second tranche of legislation, this from a Democratic member of the Intel Committee, Kirsten Gillibrand. This is a more expansive legislation. It set up the task force and other things, got lots more press. Again, the bill is emanating from the Senate, and the House is not tampering the language. It's pretty much going through as the Senate wrote it, and the House can change legislation before it's signed by the president. This happens all the time, but that wasn't the case. More press, more action, and so forth. And we get a third tranche of legislation in 2022 for the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act, which was the case with the second tranche of legislation, one of the most important acts it is passed by Congress. The first act that Rubio put in was slipped into the COVID bill. That was one thing. This was going into the National Defense Authorization. This third act basically converted the UAP task force at Gillibrand into what we call eventually ARROW, All Domain Anomaly Resolution, expanding its mandate, providing more substance, getting the witnesses issues of a very significant piece of legislation. And that created even more press, more coverage, more this, more everything else, until finally we get the fourth tranche of legislation that was signed in December of last year. So that is the very quick summary of what happens between December 17, 2016, 17, 2017, 2023, going into 24. Now, let me now put a little more context on this. Legislation was unprecedented, powerful, and was pushed the disclosure process forward. But there was something else going on. It had been going on all the way back to the mid-90s. That technically, if one were to look forward and extrapolate forward, play futurist, would have told a reasonable person, and I am a reasonable person, that the truth embargo was a dead policy walk, right? And if you want to hang to it, until the last dog dies, fine, but it's over. Accept it. Get on the right side of history. Why? Because in the second half of the 1990s came the rise of the internet. All powerful God internet, which was going to change everything. And of course, it did. You had the rise of websites and browsers, Mozilla, and not Mozilla, Netscape, and the other, forget his name. And right away, we became known that outside of porn, which porn helped make the internet. Porn took the internet from like nice idea to whoa, global, because we're humans, as we do. Okay.
Yeah. But those are the two biggest searches, I think, during that time was the UFO topic and
quickly it was
pornography topic.
Number two,
right
behind porn. And
right.
That should have tweaked the awareness of a lot of people. And so that happens. And then social media starts arriving in the early aughts, 2003, Facebook, 2006, Twitter. And then obviously comes Instagram and TikTok and all of it, where there's not millions or hundreds of millions, but billions of people signed up, communicating at will with each other, posting like crazy, whatever they want, depending on the country, almost unlimited, ability to post anything they wanted, less so in some countries. And again, this is not something the truth embargo wanted to see. And so clearly the writing's on the wall. You can't, when you have that level of communication capability, not only just to send a text or an email, put up websites, put up videos, and then because Google adds translations. So hell, you want to find out what's going on in Saudi Arabia, bring up a site, translate it to English. Anybody inside government should have known it's pretty much over start figuring out how to end the truth embargo, get on the right side of history, because it's game over. But that policy, so entrenched, tied up with national security, they just couldn't. Then came, you had it starts with the idea of broadcast, which made a fortune for somebody. I forget the guy who made it. It was money. The name escapes me. Everybody knows who he is. Where radio stations started broadcasting on the internet, in addition to over the airwave. Big deal. That went on for a while, and that had to expand the access to information. And then a lot of people were going on Amazon and seeing the cost of a really good camera has gone really down. And boy, I can get a really nice mic, and lighting isn't bad. And I can actually broadcast on the internet too, because there's something else that happened called YouTube, right? In other words, in other words, if you were a truth embargo person, uber all until the end, the Greek gods were just raining down upon you awful, terrible things. It was going to make your life miserable. So now you got the YouTube and then other versions of that, and then begins the podcast revolution. And not surprising, this issue is attractive if you're trying to get eyeballs and people watching your podcast. And so it became a major subject in the podcast world. At the same time, the internet was creating something else that I had never heard of prior to the 21st century. I forget when I first heard this term. It's a term that strikes fear into the coldest heart of those national security people that believe the truth embargo was one of the greatest things since sliced. Influencer. Influencer. Ooh, what is an influencer? Well, it could be any number of people, but it's so significant that it includes teenagers who are very good in front of the camera, somewhat funny, or who somehow, who knows how, go from nobody knows who they are, 2.5 million followers. In which case, if they just hold up, I don't candy bar and tell people, that's my favorite candy bar, immediately several million of these start being sold around the country. Influencers. Well, now you have influence where 2 million followers, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 100 million followers. And now you got influencers. And guess what? It's still a free country. And it's one of those influencers. Let's take Taylor Swift. She has 90 followers. Taylor Swift did what Edgar Mitchell did back in 2009, where he went in front of the CNN cameras at the National Press Club after one of my X conferences and said there's an extraterrestrial presence here. And not much happened, even though he was an astronaut that walked on the moon with a PhD in astrophysics. If Taylor Swift were to go on her site and say, there's an extraterrestrial presence here, we might as well just immediately head right to the post-disclosure world. The president will be racing for the East Room to go, absolutely, there's an extraterrestrial presence here. All right. Hey, Taylor, talk to me. I mean, I could be happy to help you do that. But it's okay. I'm just saying, the truth embargo, surviving from 47 to 63 to 91 and to the early aughts, barely was one thing. But actually trying to maintain that embargo over the last 12 years is wholesale insanity. And yet, by God, they tried to do it. And in the process, they undermined their moral authority and the trust of the American people and just ground it down into powder, along with all the other things that the government was doing, right, which I was watching as an activist. And I'm realizing if you ground the trust of the American people into powder, at some point, you got nothing, in which case you can't do anything. Nobody will let you do anything. You can't legislate. You can't get people to pay attention. You can't do quality politics. You can just wander around in a post-apocalyptic political reality looking like fools. And that's exactly what is happening. Because, among other things, in spite of the extraordinary developments since the beginning of the internet, United States government's military intelligence complex said, we will not let this embargo go. People cannot handle this truth. They have a right to know. We have a right to know. They don't have the need to know. We have a need. Us managers of the truth. Of course, history is not going to be kind to them. Okay, now Endgame is now underway. And I mean, literally, we're a couple of moves from checkmate. And it came suddenly, unexpectedly, right? I mean, I was relatively happy where things are going, and I liked the process. I knew the briefings were taking place, the 3 tranches of legislation were happening, though the political situation in the United States was continuing to, how would you say, be unpredictable. And then there was this war in the Ukraine, a little worried about that. But overall, I'm liking where things are going. And then boom, right? Another major historical event, easily at the level of 2017 and those articles in the New York Times. And one can make it even more significant. And it was inevitable. As I said, the reason that 10 people came forward to the Stars Academy in 2017, and by the way, they're pretty sure they were supposed to come out in 2016, late 2016. But the political situation went a different direction. They had to step back. But what?
And how often does that happen where something is planned to happen and then, we got to push back a year. Push it back 2 years. I mean, with this topic, it seems like that's just been the entire thing since 1947.
If you look at history in general, the more profound a historical process is, particularly of an activist nature, the more vulnerable it is to historical circumstances. And some things are just not that important. You want to get it done. Yeah, I don't know. A war takes place, but it's okay. We'll get it done. But when you're in big, powerful, important issues, much more vulnerable to history. And this certainly qualifies for that. And in the end, it was inevitable that, these 10 had come forward, but they came forward in an organized way, right? Part of an organization. Bio was up there, right? The one thing that came from that, of course, was the 3 gun camera clips. The story about ATIP and so forth was important, but the gun camera clips were critically important, even though they don't prove there's ETs here. We don't know what those craft are. But the point is, we don't know what those craft are, and those are gun camera clips, which confirmed what my colleagues have been saying forever. We have thousands of them. And if the government would release thousands of them, I think that would be the end of the truth embargo. So none of them got released, but those 3 came out, thus confirming there's other thousands, which just makes it harder for the thing to go forward. So it was a big deal. But inevitably, somebody within the military intelligence complex was going to get more than just achieve a state of mind where it's really time for the people to know the truth, but in fact, really angry, upset, and make a decision to come forward as in a very formal way. There have been some whistleblowers over the years, going back to the early aughts for sure, but they didn't come from the right place. The timing was different. The circumstances were different, and it did not advance the game sufficiently. This was different. This was a major move in the chess game. And of course, I'm talking about David Grush. I didn't see him coming. I knew there were people that knew about him inside government without question. I don't think they thought he would do this, though they thought he might do this. I didn't even know about it, but he came forward on June 5th. Mark that day. That's an important day. And David Grush, I think, ultimately will be the president. So, and let me restate, the vast majority of people that come forward and talk about this issue in whatever context are not whistleblowers. They are just witnesses. Whistleblowers are a special category. And he fully qualified because, one, he made it clear that he believed the policy of a truth embargo was illegal, right? And he was coming forward to state that. And he had a very significant testimony, which by and large was violating an NDA or classification system status of one kind or another. Though, of course, at that time, it was getting a little unclear what you could say or not say. So as whistleblowers go, he was, I think, controlled, reasonable. He really tried to not go too far over the line like an Edward Snowden did. I'm not no disrespect to Edward Snowden. I'm just saying that whistleblowing comes in many forms and is very complicated. And so he came forward in an orchestrated, very strong way on June the 5th. And that was the article on the debrief by Blumenthal and Kane, and of course, the interview to Ross Coulthard, thus giving them their place in history, particularly Blumenthal and Kane, because Ralph and Leslie also were two of the three authors of the 2017 articles in the New York Times. And so you take that and you add it to the Grush article and the debrief, that's Pulitzer Prize. I mean, it's just, to me, not even close. But of course, we're talking about ETs, right? I think they will eventually get the Pulitzer Prize. And so, boom, what comes down? And I was at the Contact in the Desert conference in Indian Wells, which, by the way, is coming up again, May 30 to June 3. Going to be huge. Going to probably have 3,000 people, 66 speakers. I'll be there. You want to book your rooms now, folks. Contactinthedesert.com. So we were all there on the last day, and then the word was going around that something had happened. And what had happened is somebody saw the debrief article, which came out of Laura that day online. And they're going, this guy is confirming there's ET Tech, and he's going to be giving an interview. And so we all gathered together in a room and watched it live together, the Contact in the Desert. Now, I got to tell you, that was a special day.
So you watched it live at Contact in the Desert. Did you have an audience when you played this?
No, this was the last day. It's the intensive day where they have just intensive.
Okay.
Dolan was giving one, Danny Sheehan was giving one, Linda Moulton Howe, and so forth. So there were still quite a few hundred people left, but the big crowd is on this Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think it was like 1,200, about 1,300. Okay, so we all watched it together, and so he drops the hammer. He says, I confirm that we have ET vehicles, non-human vehicles, non-human biologic. And I'm not just anybody. I was working on the UAP task force when I was given this information. And I didn't just hide it to come forward now. I actually went to the Intel Committee, right? And then I got harassed and bothered, and then I went to the Inspector General and got some relief from that, but it didn't stop it all. And I started getting death threats, and finally I had enough, and I decided, boom, I'm coming forward and go public as a whistleblower. And we have non-human tech and non-human bodies. So this is confirmed to me by other members of the intelligence community, which I had worked with over the many years working in the intelligence community in various ways. And so it's not just secondhand testimony. It is secondhand testimony confirmed by others. And that was a major chess move. And off we go.
And that reshuffles the board, because guys like yourself and your colleagues were probably thinking, okay, we're on the right track here. This is going to take a little bit more time. But then all of a sudden this comes out and you're like, whoa, we got to reevaluate. What did this guy just do? And so
we've always known we're on the right track. When this comes out, it wasn't reevaluate. It was like, okay, this is endgame, right? Get your cleats on, okay, get the pads on, right? And get back on the field and ram this ball into the end zone. All right. Double your efforts, triple your efforts. Okay. In other words, it just lit those who weren't already on fire in this movement on fire. All right. So boom, off we go. And in rapid succession, things start happening. So this is June 5. And I'm going, okay, this is a major event. What's going to happen next? What happened next was huge. A lot going on. Of course, the media is going nuts, just articles pouring forward worldwide. So obviously that's not helping the truth embargo, which is pretty much a dead policy walking already. But the process underway that had been being put together with the gentleman that I told you about and others, and 17 was moving forward nicely. And there have been legislation has been written, lots of briefing, and witnesses are coming forward. And so it was an orderly process leading to, obviously, disclosure. And I was happy. And at this point is when I need to take a moment and restate something I have now said, because people need to know this, particularly if they're confused. History will confirm it, but it's very helpful, I think, for somebody who doesn't like being confused and will be able to deal with the ultimate truth as it comes forward. I think it's helpful, and it is this. If you think that all of that you've seen happening, legislation, Congress coming forward and saying this and saying that, the creation of the task force, Arrow, all of that, NASA setting up a UFO study group. If you think any of this is something to do with the government trying to find out finally what's going on up there in the sky, you're mistaken. It has nothing to do. Absolutely.
And that's a huge thing you're saying right there, because that is something that is there's almost like there's two sides of the coin and they're both going like this. One is what you're saying, like they already figured it out and everyone's like, we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. And they're both coming to this point.
The vast majority of people in the world are going to look at it that way because they don't know enough to know better. All right. And some people don't even care, don't even pay attention. But in the significant portion of the public that has been paying attention and cares about it, doesn't mean they're an activist, doesn't mean they're reading all the books. But they're watching Ancient Alien, which has a pretty big audience, and so many other shows. God, on top of it, they know something's going on and they'd like to know more, whatever. That huge audience is, particularly the Gen Zs, they're going to react to what's happened over the last few years is, finally, hey, there's something going on. The government found out about it, and they know, and they're going to check it out for us. They're going to find out the truth and let us know. Thank you, government. It has nothing to do with that. What has been going on since 2017, and to some degree even before that, because I can assure you the government's been preparing for this day, this coming day, for a long time, is this. They had to set up as much infrastructure as possible. So they were already set when the inevitable happened. And the president of the United States finally steps out in the East Room and says, we're not alone in the universe, folks. We've got ETs here, and boy, you want to know more about it. I'm going to help you get that information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Disclosure Day, capital D, Confirmation Day. Because if they are not ready, if they don't have this infrastructure, if they don't have the legislation, if they haven't given entities like NASA and others to sort of get on board the ship, right? Then the ship is going to sail off without them, and they're not going to be able to. They're going to have a world on fire coming to their door. They're going to have journalists on fire, jamming the briefing rooms all over Washington, D.C. with 10,000 questions and no legislation, no setup, nothing, trying to deal with it. It will be absolute insanity. And so they had to prepare for it. It's fully reasonable. Of course you do that all the time.
And they need time.
Except there's one problem. This whole process of preparing for the inevitable disclosure day could not be represented as preparing for the inevitable disclosure day. They couldn't say why. They had to couch it in the terms of, oh, we need to look at this. We need to set up reporting. We need to do this and that and everything else. Because if they actually said why they were doing it, then it would be disclosure. Right? And so it was a catch-22. I mean, to get it set up, the president could have come out and said, there's an extraterrestrial presence here. Now, if you'll just give us a couple of years to get our act together to deal with that, just leave us alone. Don't ask any questions. And we'll get all the apparatus together, and then we're going to, start telling you the truth. That wasn't going to work. So the president couldn't do that. They still had to set it up. And so they had to lie. I mean, lie. They had to lie in order to get out from under in an orderly, responsible way, an even bigger lie. I am okay with this. Everybody will be okay with this. I understood it. Got it. I'm saying, look, yeah, you're going to have to do You might have taken a little less time, but then a pandemic showed, killing people. And then the political process in the United States continued to deteriorate, meaning wholesale madness, craziness, clown shows, the whole 9 yards. So that didn't help. But whatever. I get it. And I'm happy with it. But meanwhile, the rest of the public is going. And of course, a lot of people that know it's true, know the ETs are here, are going, what? You're doing what? And they're getting really irritated. And I know that because I'm on social media. And if you want to find out how irritated people are, go on social media for a few months. Oh, you'll get a very good idea. And it was really, it's getting tough. So I made the commitment that using my access to the public through podcasts, and I do more than probably any living human being, as a guest. I'm up there.
You're up there.
Because
But that's a good thing.
I don't care. It could be in Bulgaria at 2 a.m.
It's a great thing that you're doing to get our information out. No, none taken. I think it's great.
And I'm just pounding this message. I would love to be able to say this on CNN, News Nation, Fox News, pick one of those shows.
We talk about News Nation for a second and their contribution to this topic over the last 6 to 8 months. News Nation. We talk about that for a second.
News Nation is elite. It's leading. Literally, if you go to my print media archive on my website, you will see that it is covering the issue more than any other entity, except a couple of papers in the UK, who are also massively covering. The number of articles I logged in last year was 1,800. We're going to hit about 1,800 to 1,900 this year. That's 4,000 articles in 2 years, triage from 8,000 articles. Again, if you're the truth embargo guy, right? If you're sitting there, I got the truth embargo, and you got that, and you're watching this, you're going, yeah, why? Yeah, please stop this. Let me get out of here. So, the point I was making is that the problem was almost insolvable. They had no choice. They hoped it would be as quick as possible, and it has taken time. But they had to lie to the American people, and that is why. Oh, and by the way, News Nation, Fox, CNN, none of them. They will not bring me on. I had a couple of slots, and then the last minute canceled. They will not bring me on. They do not want me saying this, as I can tell. Maybe because I'm not special enough. I don't have the credentials. I'm a little nuts, a little crazy, and I like to make jokes. But whatever, they will not let me come on and say this because whatever, there are limits to what this entity or that entity are willing to do in the last days of the truth embargo. But they need to let me on, and here's why. There was a reason why I've been repeating this message endlessly. It's not to embarrass the government. It's not to gain points with conspiracists. It is for a very important reason. It's because, first of all, a person can keep two somewhat fully antithetical, but two somewhat conflicting ideas in their head at the same time. Not that hard. And so the American people, knowing that the government had to misrepresent all of this, service to getting to the point where the government could disclose the ET presence by the president, but be ready to then deal with all that comes after that. This process in which they had to lie about and misrepresent it, which created lots of grief and problems for the people doing it, but that's going to happen given the circumstances. It's okay to know that, right? Because if you know that they are lying, but you know why they are lying, and you know that it leads to the end of the truth embargo, an extraordinarily needed and profound event, then at least the end game is authentic. It's not another lie that you suddenly learn about down the line. You mean you didn't tell us about the ET presence going all the way back to Roswell, and for the last 5 years, you've been lying through your teeth about everything you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Because you couldn't tell us the truth. And so you just kept lying, and I hate you even more. If the American people understand that this misrepresentation was absolutely necessary, and it was, if we want to have a responsible, orderly process post-disclosure, then it makes it a little easier for them to accept that when they finally learn that shortly after disclosure. I'm good with it. And that's why I give this message there. It's it's so that it gives it more authenticity to it. And I think actually will help the government PR-wise after disclosure takes place. But there is one downside to it. Well, I say it's a downside. Because the government is still dancing around the reality and the truth of it, though increasingly less so. I mean, Rush then went in front of the House subcommittee under oath and said there's ET vehicles here and ET bodies. And when asked if he knew the locations of them, said he did, right? I mean,
Right.
And we'll get to Schumer in a minute. But if people understand that, it's going to be easier for them to move forward post-disclosure. Because it's taken this so much time, it has given an opportunity for those in government that still do not want this policy to end, that they simply cannot accept that we can handle this truth, unlike themselves. It gives them some time to try to work the system, push back, whatever. It also gives the skeptics, God bless them, that are out there to have some fun and get some eyeballs in what they're doing, the blather that they usually put out. So that's the downside of it. I mean, I think ideally what you wanted to do is get the process going, get the legislation done, and then get things set up, hold the hearings that have to come. And I don't mean the House subcommittee hearing, that was fine. I'm talking about an Intel committee hearing in the Senate, 20 times bigger than that, 20 times, 100 times more powerful, and get it done. Yeah, if they could do it like that, it would have made it been less opportunity for confusion and push, but it has been drawn out again because of developments. I mean, what happened, what's going on in the Ukraine is a tragedy. What's going on in Darfur is a tragedy. In Yemen is a tragedy. And then we had a Middle East catastrophe take place. And so, yeah, history makes it tough when you're trying to deal with an issue. All right. Nevertheless, we then had what I consider to be just about the last move in this chess game take place. And the date on this was July 8th. 39 days after David Grush told Ross Coulthard, there's non-human bodies here. My logic. Those dealing with the truth embargo privately behind the scenes had to make a move. What do you do? I mean, you're going through a fairly elaborate process in which you're trying to explain to the people that you're trying to figure out what's going on here, service to the truth and all of that, and it's going forward. You're getting ready. Pretty soon the president, you can hold the hearing, the witnesses that are being gathered can be testifying under oath in front of millions of people. All of a sudden, a credible servant of the public, a former major in the Air Force, comes forward and says, we have bodies and we have tech. Well, he's not the president. So when David Grush says we have non-human tech, that's not disclosure. And an informal disclosure. But it's not disclosure. It's not the paradigm shifting event of all time that's going to open doors and lead to all matter of significant consequences and challenges and activities and reforms possibly, but it is kind of the cat. What do you do? How do you continue to play the game the way you were playing and act like, yeah, no idea what's up there, but boy, we're going to find out.
Right. It accelerates the topic by light years.
It's a political problem for the process, huge. And we needed something huge to happen. It took 39 days. But in that 39 days, after June the 5th, I don't know when it started, but probably right away, a even more powerful person than Senator Rubio or Senator Warner or Senator Gillibrand, right, or Tim Burchett, Chuck Schumer, one of the Gang of Eight, at the highest levels of classification, Congress, and happened to be the Senate Majority Leader, which is notable, a very political position, which is why he'd stayed out of this. Step in the background while the Senate Intel Committee is just rocking and rolling. he made this move. This was put together in that 39-day period between June 5, July 14th. And as near as I can tell, I may get some details wrong. Never mind. I'm happy to be corrected. Call me. Working with Mike Rounds and other members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, possibly some people of the Intel Committee, they crafted some bonum bills, the UAP bills. They crafted a 65 piece of legislation, which was essentially the capstone to the whole legislative process, which starts off very limited in 2020, and then creates a bill that, once signed in 2023, is pretty much it, right? In other words, we needed to build a stadium, for the opening football game of the series, and that just built the stadium, right? One, he said, we're going to pass a bill, and it's going to be called the UAP Disclosure Act, and I'm going, hello. Here's Senator Schumer, UAP Disclosure Act. Okay. And it's going to have in it the process by which it's all going to come forward. It's all going to come forward. Everything. Not right away. Some now, some later, reviewed in the process, but it's all going to come forward. But basically, you're not, and you're fully acknowledging, there's a whole bunch of
You're
stuff
saying it without saying it.
Yeah. And, well, in a sense, you're actually saying it in a sense. And
Right.
It will be presented to the American people in an orderly, responsible process that, not surprisingly, the wording was ideal. The UAP disclosure, control disclosure. And, okay, I'm going, thank you, right on, Then it is mentioned, very quickly known, that he wasn't just, here's a plan, here are the powers that will ensure this plan happens. And when you get to that, that's when things gets interesting. The government has a habit of coming up with wonderful ideas. Yeah, here's what is good, and we say this is great. They provide no powers in the legislation to actually make it great. It's like they're making a statement without allowing it to come to fruition. This is a nasty habit they need to get out of. He said, no, here are the powers. And that's when a lot of people sat up in their chair. A lot of people in offices all over Washington, D.C., and probably in offices around the world, and said, what? I beg your pardon? He indicated very quickly soon that there would be a UAP review board appointed by the president that would be part of the process of clearing the stuff going forward, and that review board would subpoena power. If you're sitting on an ET craft somewhere 50 levels underneath, Mexico desert or something, and nobody has seen you for 40 years, and they learn about you, want you to come up and talk to them, and that's not a hearing, just talk to them, right? I know there's nothing criminal here, and you tell them, I'm sorry, I'm so classified and so pleased down here. I got a nice house, it's completely, I got a nice, apartment down here. Nobody bothers me. I got an 80-cent television. I got full cable. I'm not coming to talk to you. They say, you don't come to talk to me, you're going to go to jail. You're going to go from that nice secret base to jail. Subpoena power. And then it said that it was going to give additional oversight powers to certain key members of Congress and give them subpoena power. And then also they were going to be assigned the ultimate highest level classification, meaning they could penetrate USAPs as needed in service to the legislation in the process, the controlled disclosure plan process.
Those are the secret access programs you're talking about?
Everything.
Special access programs?
That's right. Classified to everything. Okay, and that's great. That's great. And I know I got a lot of people are now way up in their chair at this point and going, and then he drops the bomb. Boom. This bill will also give the United States government eminent domain over that non-human tech that David Grush told us we have. And that's when a whole lot of defense contractor executives who might have been dining at the corporate dining room spit their soup out all over the table. Like, are you kidding me? And when I heard that, I'm going, oh man, get the champagne ready. Get the hors d'oeuvres, reserve a room down at the Hilton, whatever the hell, because we're going to be having some post-disclosure celebration parties very soon. So, obviously, that generated a lot of intense press and what have you, and people got really fired up. And there was some misunderstandings, which didn't help because they weren't clear. Look, nothing's perfect. The use of the word control in the eventual legislation was a mistake. They should have come up with another word, but I knew what it meant. It meant responsible, orderly disclosure, not wild, crazy-ass disclosure. All right? And eminent domain needed to be explained because not everybody in the United States knows what the hell it is. Right? Eminent domain does not mean we have the right to send stormtroopers to your laboratory and drag you out and take all the stuff. It means that the United States government, if it feels that something must be acquired by the government in service to the common good, we will acquire it. You will be compensated. It doesn't mean we will do it. It means we have the right to do it. And that happens to be true for state and local governments all across the country and the federal government. All right? Okay. And we might not. We might just say, nah, we don't need it. Okay? Jurors, do what you want. Do what you want. But if we want it, we can have it. That's what it means. But of course, a bunch of people jumped on that and misrepresented it to get, to build opposition to it. Nevertheless, eminent domain. You got, and again, it regards the civilian world, not the government world. They're not declaring eminent domain over the Air Force. They're declaring eminent domain over in regards to the defense contractors, the high-tech companies that are contracted by the United States to do high-tech things. And there are reasons for that. One, they've got top people. Two, the government has its limitations. It can't do everything. I assure you, plenty of this kind of research and work goes on within government realm, but a lot of it was contracted out. No problem. Nobody really... They build our submarines, they build our jet planes, they do all kinds of stuff. No problem. And it happens that they were dealing with the ET tech, which was convenient in some ways. But the government was also dealing with ET tech. All right. So both the government and these contractors have access to the tech, and they've been studying it for decades. All right. But civilian is not the same as government, and he wanted eminent domain in that act. And this was a major problem. And the reason was simple. It wasn't just about embarrassment, right? It was about money. Because the defense contractors had been paid huge sums of money to study, re-engineer, and learn whatever science they could learn about the nature of physics and how these craft work and anything else, right? They've been doing it for decades. And I assure you that they have learned something and created things which, once we get disclosure, which we should have had 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago, will be incredibly valuable. And those companies stood to make billions and billions of dollars. But they couldn't really cash in. So they were getting paid now. They're getting paid to do this work. So they're making money. They're doing fine. But big money could not come until we had disclosure itself from the president. Once that happens, now lots of stuff can be put into play and become part of the public reality. And they had been patiently waiting for that along with us for decades, after decade, after decade. And all of a sudden, Chuck Schumer intimated that, well, you may not make anything. We may just take it. We'll deal with it. And, no patents. We'll have the patents. It's not yours if we want it to be ours. And they clearly calculated that is unacceptable. And so they made the decision to go after this bill. Right? The first three sailed through. This one, They made the decision to go after this bill. And Chuck Schumer knew it. He knew they were going to go after this bill. Absolutely knew it. All right. And yet he put it out there. And so what happened? Here's my best.
So wait a second. So he's making a chess move, and he's already predicting what their counter move is going to be. So, all right. So go from there. What are we doing here?
He's making, I think, one of the greatest political chess moves of all time. Really, it's up there. And he's already calculated the range of moves they could make, right? And he's already factored in. And if you were watching this game as a real chess game, you would realize, well, it looked like it was going to be a tie, but wait a minute, because of that move, it's mate. No matter what they do, eventually it's mate. So it's game over, right? Won the world championship. There's only a couple of things they could have done. One, first of all, one of the things they could not do is nothing. I mean, they had to respond to this, and he knew that. So, and of course, that's the way it is. If you're not going to move, then you're giving up the game, turn over your king, you're done. So they have to move, the game's over. So he knew he was going to make a move. One of the moves would be, they have to come forward and put pressure on the reconciliation process between the House and the Senate and get rid of that eminent domain. That had to go. The other stuff was basically about bringing disclosure out, and ultimately it's going to come out, get the truth out, and they would cooperate with that, God bless them, but they would be keeping the patents and the other stuff to make the big bucks. And so if they did that, I think Schumer may have calculated, look, they're probably not thrilled about the subpoena power and the classifications, right? And the UAP review board. We'll trade it off for that. In other words, we'll keep those. We won't execute them eminent domain. So it was a bargaining chip. So that was one possibility. The other possibility is they would go for everything, cancel the bill completely. But he knew that was almost certainly not going to happen. They couldn't go that far. If they had actually ended the bill, they would have really lit a fire out there in the world of social media that they could not put out. So he knew that wouldn't happen. So that move he was not worried about that. But the move that he might have very well expected is that they would basically strip all the powers out of the bill. Okay. So, and what happened? What happened is that's the move they made. Okay, so now, what is his plan with respect to that? It was, I made this major move. They have made a move that I expected they would make. And how is that going to work, right? Is that a bad thing, good thing? Nah, it's a great thing. Why? Simple. First of all, and I love this, after the bill was announced that it was going to be written without the powers, where they stripped all the powers out. That's what they did. They stripped out subpoena power, UAP review board, classification, high-level, full-level classification. They stripped all of that out, and the subpoena and the eminent domain, and left the essence of the bill, which is, yes, we're going to have to get this stuff out. We're going to eventually have to give it to the American people. We're going to have to eventually archive it. Okay, fine, great. But no power to do it unless they let it happen. In other words, they contain the power. So they controlled the situation for a while longer. Maybe they thought, oh, well, then we're going to make some other moves and disclosure will go on, until we're finally very rich or dead, and whatever. Mm-hmm. But no. So they stripped the powers out. Fine. So Chuck Schumer then goes on the Senate floor to put something in the record. And he brings Mike Rounds along with him, who is on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Some people know about this. You go on the floor. There's a camera in front of you. You present to the camera. There's nobody in the room except maybe the cleaning person is sweeping up the floor. And you put the thing on record, and then you go. So he goes on. Go and listen to this. He first indicates the great disappointment he has that they taken all these powers out of the bill. And then, he sort of mentions he's really a little irritated because it was pretty much the Republicans that championed the bill change. And then indicates we are going to continue to fight, though, to get all of that and get this stuff to the American people, and they leave. Okay? All right. So he just indicated his intentions. They're fine. All right. And the other aspect of this is that, of course, he knew, as we eventually knew, who was behind it. Right? He knew what went on. And eventually we knew as well. For a number of weeks, we didn't realize that they were pushing back, but eventually it started to leak out. It was very confusing. I responded to it. I sort of overreacted. But ultimately, we figured out what was going on, right? What happened? What was the details that Chuck Schumer knew about? The defense contractors, along with maybe a few people within just the government itself, DOD, who simply believe that the truth embargo must not end because it would not be in our national interest. They honestly feel that way. They're wrong, but still. But mostly the defense contractors called up their lobbyists on their secure phones, right? I'm sure all of them under NDAs, and said, you got to go and get that bill gutted or eliminated, right? And off they went, up to the Hill to make that happen. Now, how? Just getting down on their knees and begging, certain important people on the Hill, please don't pass that bill that way. No. Guess what? The defense contractors, there are many. Everybody mentions like Lockheed Martin, and takes all the hits, but believe me, there are plenty of them. All of them give, I haven't researched it, could be tens, could be hundreds, over the years, millions of dollars, campaign fund dollars to members of Congress. With the emphasis mostly on the emphasis, it shifts to the Republicans. Republicans get a larger share. It's not much larger, but they get a little larger share. Also, the Democrats get it. And of course, it's money going to the members of Congress that could significantly impact, right, the defense contractors. Probably not a lot of money goes to those sitting on the agricultural committees, but maybe not. I don't know. The point is, the ones that matter, oh yeah, they're getting tons of money. And they basically got in touch with them, their intermediaries, and said something along the lines of, that bill's got to go, and if it doesn't go, then your campaign funding contributions will go. And we know who they approached. We know who the key players were eventually. Not surprisingly, the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee, Mike Rogers, who gets a lot of campaign donations from them, and is very powerful in national security. The Republican chair of the House Intel Committee, Mike Turner, right, gets lots of campaign donations and is very powerful. And the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who, as Speaker of the House, has the ability to hold that bill up. So I don't know if he gets campaign contributions from the Intelligence Committee. Boy, is he powerful. And they went to Mitch McConnell.
But they got him.
All right.
That was Mitch. Oh, that Mitch McConnell you're talking about. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, he went to Mitch McConnell as well. So these four very powerful Republicans were approached by the representatives of the defense contractors and basically said, and there might have been others, deal with that bill. And how do you deal with that? Simple. You get in touch. I mean, these people are not in, they're not in confinement. They're not held, in an undisclosed location. You got all these, members and staffers of the House and Senate in what it calls a reconciliation conference, in which, where they have to decide on the final language of the bill, the Senate and House versions, and that is the final language that goes to the president. And these people are very available, and so they get in touch with them one way or another, and they basically say, this is what we want. This is what you've got to do. And they convinced enough of them, at least these four most powerful people convinced enough of them, that you have to gut the bill. And that's exactly what they did. Okay? And then the bill was passed. It's a fraction of the size. It was set at 75 pages, down to 20, whatever. And it does, and it had no choice, fundamentally confirm and advance a little bit the fact that the government's got a bunch of stuff and it needs to come out and go to the American people. They're not mentioning in the bill crash vehicles, I can assure you, but they are referring to the basic stuff that's there. It's going to have to come out. So in a way, they are acknowledging the reality that now is all over the place, that, yeah, there's ETs here. We've got crash vehicles. We got their bodies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But still, it is a significant victory for the defense contractors, except it isn't. Because several things happened when Chuck Schumer stepped in front of the cameras on July the 14th and announced what was going to happen, thus, and then further confirmed by the language that went up on the Senate legislative website. This. He sent a message to the entire world. Because you see, if you got a computer and you've got access to the internet, You live in one of those countries that actually only allows you to, watch, go to, you know, uh, TikTok sites or something or whatever. You can go find the Senate legislative site and read that bill. If you are working in the deepest deepest underground military base, call them dumbs, right? As long as you can get to the internet, you can go read that bill. I mean, you're not violating your security clearance by looking at the Senate website. And so that language of that bill, those whole 75 pages, was up there for months. August, September, October, to be read by anybody in the world. In China, Russia, Canada, UK, Australia, United States. The message was sent. This is ultimately what we're going to do. We're going to have a controlled disclosure plan. We're going to have a process in which every single thing the government knows and has regarding the extraterrestrial presence, which is accumulated over the last 77 years, will go through a process in which eventually it is shown and provided to the American people and archived in the National Archives, the Smithsonian, or wherever else it needs to be archived. It will start immediately after the bill. Anything older than 25 years gets fast-tracked, but still has to be reviewed. Anything that happens in the moment will have up to 25 years to hold on to it. That doesn't mean they're going to hold on to it for 25 years, but it's kind of a gift to the military intelligence complex. So, we're not crazy people here. But I assure you, post-disclosure, something happens and somebody in the DOD says, okay, well, we've got 25 years not to talk about this. That's not the way it's going to go, but still, that's cool. But that stuff older than 25, that was pretty good. Okay. All right. So he sent that message. That's what's going to happen. He did something else. He locked up Grush.
Incredible.
He locked up Grush because, you see, he just said, I am the Senate Majority Leader. I want eminent domain over non-human tech. Well, if Grush is lying, there's no non-human tech, in which case eminent domain is not needed. So he just backed him up, right? Eliminated.
Exactly.
And anybody that wants to challenge Grush after that is an idiot, okay? And he's also backed up the Senate Intel Committee that's been championing this all these years, and to some degree, he's backing up the conservative Republicans like Burchett, Mace, Luna, even Gates in the House, saying, yeah, that's all right. He's backing them up. He's providing cover. Okay, he's doing that, and right. He is confirming that ETs are here. It's that simple. All of that happened on July the 14th, and as the legislation was eventually confirmed and written, all he did in that one moment. And then they gutted the bill, all right, but the damage was done. And so once the bill was gutted, and that's settled, but the message had been sent, at that point, which ultimately was confirmed and was signed in early December by the president. So that was now been a couple of months. Since that moment, we are this close to disclosure, as close as we've ever been. We are only one thing, one act from ending the truth embargo. It is the Senate Intel Committee simply does what it said it was going to do, but it's been delayed and delayed and delayed because the world is insane and it's nothing but awful shit happening every day. But it has enough witnesses to hold a month of hearings. It just needs to pick the top 20. Basically 20 Grushes is what you're going to be seeing on television. Bring them into D.C., pay their airfare, pay their hotel, unlimited buffet, right? Whatever, all they need. Bring them in front of the Intelligence Committee under oath, morning and afternoon sessions for 1 week. Cameras on, public watching, worldwide audience, could be 1 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, pick a number. And once that testimony is on the record and seen by the world, the president doesn't have to wait a week. The president can walk out the day after those hearings are finished, the first week, and confirm the ET presence. Not as a force majeure political act, Meaning, I'm the president of the United States, and by God, there's ETs here, and I'm going to tell you, my God, nobody else wants me to, but I'm telling you. And by the way, vote for me next November. No, he can walk out in a responsible way and tell everybody what they've already basically figured out, that I believe this. I'm convinced. My people are convinced. My top advisors are convinced. I've talked to them. And we are not alone. We do have apparently this tech, and you want to know about it, and I'm going to help you find out about it, and we're going to find out about a lot more. Take the weekend off, have a few drinks, chill, try to get some sleep, because Monday morning, the new paradigm begins. Done.
Damn.
That's all that stands between us and disclosure right now, is simply Mark Warner calling that hearing, and I'm doing everything I can, and others are doing what they can to get him to do it. I don't care what's going on in the Middle East or the Ukraine. I don't care how awful the politics is, right? This transcends all of it. It trumps all of it, all right? Hold that hearing now, immediately.
Do you see that happening anytime in the near future, like in the next couple months?
It needs to happen in the next couple of weeks. It needs to happen immediately.
There
is no reason to wait. Every delay in holding that hearing is just going to make things worse this year. And without even the ET issue in play, this year was going to be a year from hell, right? All I can say is the only reason this year won't be worse for somebody than, say, like the last couple of years, like 2020, is that you're going to survive it. Whereas 2020 was bad because a lot of people died. And that's bad. Okay, you don't want that, right? But it was a bad year for them and their family because they died. That's the only reason this won't be worse in that regard. But it's going to be awful. But if we can get the truth embargo done as early as possible, it will completely change this year. And now, the final point to be made, the piece de resistance of this whole process, and whereupon we give Chuck Schumer the trophy as world champion chess player of the 21st century, is this. Once the president confirms the ET presence to the world, the press is going crazy, and all of this is happening. Chuck Schumer and whoever else wants to sponsor it will just quietly submit to the Senate the exact same bill, word for word. The UAP Disclosure Act, with every bell and whistle. They could change it a little bit, but if I'm then, it needs to be the exact same bill, word for word, into the Senate, which will pass it immediately. Boom. Might even be, 98-2. Because remember, we're in the post-disclosure world. The entire world has been had the ET presence confirmed to them by their head of state, right? And then they'll pass it and slide it on over to whoever the hell is the House Majority Leader, which changes
next president,
right? And say, "Here's the bill," and now here's the House sitting there looking. Oh, that's the UAP Disclosure Act. That's the exact same bill. We should maybe stop that. No, right? If they have any brains left, if they have it all, become raging coke addicts or something, they're going to look at the bill and say the entire world knows the ET presence is here. This is the Disclosure Control Act to bring information out, and if we don't pass it, well, we're all going to have to move to another country or something. I mean, we're going to have to, change our names and go into a witness protection plan. And so the House will pass the bill. They might even pass it 435 to nothing. Okay? Bingo. Chess game over. Game won. Right? Chuck Schumer. That's, I think, what's going to happen. And that's why it's so profound. And I'm going to keep telling this until somebody like Chuck Schumer calls me up and says, "Steve, you got it all wrong." It's all wrong. Here's the way it really was. And I'll say, "Thank you, Senator. I shall immediately correct myself on the next 25 podcasts." So that is where it's at.
Yeah. Well, most of what you're saying has already happened. Most of what you're saying is just fact. These bills have gone through. David Grush did come forward. The Schumer amendment, before it was gutted, confirmed basically what he was saying. And then, of course, there was pushback. We know that from Turner.
Right.
And I noticed that you didn't mention what district he was from. That's fine.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, I guess. It doesn't matter because, like you said, there's multiple aerospace companies out there.
The witnesses have come forward. I mean, we know that is fact. They keep coming forward. My God, I don't know how many have come forward, because the whole legislation was designed to help that process, and they're all witnesses. But there's probably maybe a couple of whistleblowers in there, and if their testimony is profound enough and important enough, they might use them. But if they don't need to use them, I would recommend they don't use them. And if you can get disclosure based upon nothing but military, pretty much it'll be all military witnesses coming forward and simply telling you what they know under oath, that would be better. If somebody is a whistleblower, then they come in, they testify in front of a couple 100 million people. There's going to be a few in that group that are going to say you're a traitor to the country, and they'll send them white powder in the mail or something stupid like that. So it would be best if there was as few whistleblowers as possible. You just need to get it done, right? And so, and that's a fact. And the fact that the Intel committee said it was going to hold another hearing, that's a fact. The fact that they have been interviewing people is a fact. And so while I do not have access to that committee, I don't have that kind of access. I'm more than happy to come down and have lunch. I mean, just give me a call. I will be very responsible and very mature. But these are all facts. There's nothing that I have said that isn't already established. Therefore, and when I say the President Biden knows there's an ET presence, that it is a fact, but it is not a fact that you can substantiate. You got to take my word for it, but I assure you, the case for it is pretty easy to make. Point is that the only thing now that's left.
I mean, he's aware of the Schumer bill. He signed it.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he knew there was an ET presence 30 years ago. Trust me. Every president, and maybe to a degree every vice president, but certainly someone with a career like him, knows there's an ET presence. Why? Because they were told. And you say, what do you mean told? You mean they got this huge briefing, in a skiff by this. So again, there's not a lot of conjecture here, and that's where we are. So here are the promos, and here are the things you all need to know. All right, first of all, shiftstorm.org, SHIFT, shiftstorm.org. Go there. I've set up this page. When you go there, you get everything you need to know to send a tag tweet to Schumer, Rubio, and Warner. Just these three. What's a tag tweet? They all have Twitter accounts. They have a handle, @Senator Schumer, whatever. You go @Senator Schumer. We want hearings in the House, Senate Intel Committee immediately. That goes in the notification box of Senator Schumer. Send lots of them. Change the wording around when you can, but send it. We want to fill it up with thousands of these notifications. Those notifications are monitored by their staff. When they see thousands of notifications on a subject like that, they're going to call a boss and say, look, you need to check the account. The senator will go to the account and see, wow, there's a whole lot of people that are tagging me with messages in here about that. That's the way to go. Mailing letters? No. Calling? No, don't do it. If you're in their state, you can actually send them an email through the form. If you're not in their state, make up an address in their state. But yeah, you can send some emails to it. They monitor that as well. Shiftstorm.org. Okay. ParadigmResearchGroup.org. That's my website.
Shiftstorm.org.
Yeah, Shiftstorm. Don't forget the F. ParadigmResearchGroup.org. Go to the menu, see resources, scroll down to Print Media Archive, punch through the flash page to Print Media Archive. You'll find 15,000 articles there linked. Most of the links are live. All the recent links are all live. Thousands of articles, which basically are covering everything that I've just told you, going back years and years. You can literally see what's happening. They have covered it. It's right there. The stigma is almost virtually gone. UFO was converted to UAP, which was eventually converted to unidentified aerial phenomena, which eventually was converted appropriately to unidentified anomalous phenomena. Okay, I get it's okay, but it was done to get away from the stigma of UFO that was painted on it by the government for decades. The stigma is now so gone that UFO is back, and people in government and media are using it, and no big deal. So the stigma's gone. All right, there's virtually no what I call ridicule or skeptic pieces, maybe 1 out of 100. Thousands of articles. You can go there and do that. Go to contactinthedesert.com. 3,000 people, biggest conference, California resort. I will be there. I'm going to be doing panels and lectures and everything else. My colleagues are going to be there. It could be a massive celebration. May 30, June 3. The same conference that was happening last year when Grush made the announcement. God knows what we're going to know by then. Come to contact in the desert.com. Paradigm Research Group will soon be a nonprofit. When that happens, I will announce it. And for the first time, I'm going to be able to accept tax-deductible donations. And I'm doing it now because Paradigm Research Group is going to be converted to a think tank in order to address the post-disclosure world, which is a whole nother ballgame. You know, the activist goal is achieved. Now, how can Paradigm Research Group be a player and help in the post-disclosure world? Go to newparadigminstitute.com, newparadigminstitute.com. It is already underway. It is going to be a major think tank in the post-disclosure world. I assure you, it's already gathered substantial people and staff, as well as an extraordinary advisory group. It already has its office right next to the Congress, the Capitol building downtown. It's also going to have an office in Northern California and LA. It is, and you want to support it. It has already gotten some funding, but it's going to get millions more. Be part of that. Support the New Paradigm Institute.
So we just interviewed Jim Garrison 2 weeks ago. So that one should be coming out today. This one will probably come out in a couple more weeks. But anyway,
Support the Soul Foundation. This is another what amounts to a post-disclosure nonprofit. Soul Foundation is more a scientific think tank put together by Gary Nolan, Nobel Prize nominee. And so that's happening. More is happening. In LA, there are multiple projects all over town related to this issue. I don't need more alien movies. In regard to that, my partner and I, Dan Harari, a publicist in Hollywood, we founded recently the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. This is a unique organization. It is a full nonprofit. It is already 501c3. We are accepting donations. Go to hollywooddisclosurealliance.org. It has one fundamental purpose. It will sell nothing. It will charge nothing. But its purpose is this. We're doing everything we can, and we're making great progress, as you will see if you go to the site, to create a giant list of founding members in the film industry, entertainment industry. We're already getting some pretty well-known people, as well as another list, or I say segment, of the people in the UAP realm, like yourself and me and everybody else, the researchers, the activists, the documentarists that have been slaving on this issue with little money and making sacrifice, and have been really unable to interact the way they should because of the truth embargo has separated them, meaning it's all silly and you're a tinfoil hat wearer, and if you're a person in Hollywood with tons of money in a studio, you're going, yeah, these people are a little crazy. That wall is gone, and so now this is a networking entity to get a chance for them to find each other and make deals. HDA doesn't make deals. We're helping other people make deals. Not only networking them together, but networking them within their own world, meaning the people that are all founding members in the Hollywood world are seeing others and going, oh, you're into this issue, let's work with you. And then everybody else, right, can go to the site and go, these are some people I should get in touch with. You can be a subscriber, right? We have founding members. We also have supporting members. Those are the people that donate. They'll be listed. And then underneath that are people that simply want the newsletter. It doesn't cost anything. And they can provide their email address. This is hollywooddisclosurealliance.org. It's making news. It's about to make a lot more news. It is a service organization designed to help people make the content in the post-disclosure world. And the more money it is contributed to it, the more events that we can put on, the more networking we can create, and the more content will be created. And the world post-disclosure is going to need content. I mean, lots of it. 8 billion people are going to have to get up to speed about what just happened and the history of this issue so they know what to do in the post-disclosure world, which I assure you is going to be very different than the pre-disclosure world. There you go. That's it.
Wow.
That's all, folks.
Steve, thanks so much for doing this, man. I've been a fan of your work. You're an absolute wonderful storyteller. I I have to have you back on at a certain point in time just to hear where we're at and more stories. I love hearing you talk, man. You are a wealth of knowledge. It's been a real pleasure for me to have you on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you wonder why a little bit crazy, that's because my mentor is the Tasmanian devil. It's pretty much where I get all my insights and thoughts, right? What can I say? All right, man. Until next time, call anytime. Happy to
keep doing what you're doing, Steve. But thank you, Steve. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll continue to follow you, and thank you everybody for tuning in. You guys have a great day.
Ad Astra.
Thanks for watching the show. I hope you guys are enjoying the content. If you're finding any value, please hit that subscribe button, that like button, and leave a comment. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps out the show.